dungeon that reeks of rot and iron. The air is thick, damp, and heavy, yet beneath it lingers something older, the scent of bodies broken by centuries of cruelty. Video. Your wrists are bound, your ankles bruised, but the chains cannot silence the rhythm in your chest. That heartbeat, stubborn and defiant, is not the pulse of a prisoner. It is the echo of a lion. They call you a subject, a savage, a body to be subdued. But in their fear, they whisper another name, the Lion of Africa. They sense what you already know, that no shackle forged in Europe can hold the fire that has carried your people across deserts, through wars, through hunger and storms. The body may bend, the knees may scrape the stone, but the spirit refuses. Each clang of iron is a demand, submission, silence, erasure. They want you to forget your throne, your lineage, the blood that once commanded armies. They want you to believe you are nothing but flesh, meat to be traded, skin to be broken. Yet even here, in the darkness, your body remembers. The bones remember the weight of crowns, the muscles recall the grip of a blade, the lungs still breathe the air of mountains where lions walk unchallenged. They will say you are conquered. But conquest is a performance, a theater of chains meant to convince the world that power belongs only to the empire. And still, the empire trembles, for it knows the truth carved in your silence: a chained lion is never a tamed one. So you wait in the shadows, wounded but unbroken. The iron gnaws at your flesh, but it cannot devour the roar inside you. That roar is patient, terrible, inevitable. For history has already chosen, you will not be remembered as the captive, but as the one who proved that chains break before a spirit ever does. The night stretches long, and in its silence, the chains dissolve into memory. You see your kingdom, not as it is, but as it was, bathed in firelight, alive with drums that carried the heartbeat of a continent. Yet when you reach for it, your hand touches only dust. The palaces stand, but empty, the banners wave, but for no one. A kingdom among ghosts. The empire's trick is not only to capture your body, but to hollow out your memory. To make you walk through ruins while whispering that you were never truly sovereign. That the throne was an illusion, the crown a borrowed ornament, the lion nothing more than a beast to be caged. And still, you remember. You remember faces carved with pride, warriors who bled rather than kneel, mothers who sang lullabies that sounded like prayers of defiance. Their voices haunt you now, not as comfort, but as accusation: do not forget us. What is a king, if his people are scattered like ash? What is a kingdom, if its name survives only in the whispers of enemies? The ghosts press in closer, their eyes heavy with betrayal. You feel their weight upon your chest, the weight of ancestors demanding that you carry them, even here, even chained. You realize then that the dungeon is not just stone and iron. It is history, rewritten by the conqueror's hand. To survive is not only to endure the body's torment, but to keep the memory alive when every shadow conspires to erase it. The ghosts will not release you, not until you choose: will you be their grave, or their roar reborn? Hunger becomes the empire's sharpest blade. It does not strike with noise or spectacle, it corrodes in silence, carving obedience into the marrow of your bones. The body weakens, the vision blurs, and every thought reduces to a single wound: survival. They know this. That is why the chains are accompanied by an emptiness that gnaws, day after day, until your dignity tastes like dust on your tongue. The machinery of hunger is precise. It is not the famine of accident, but the famine of design. Grain seized, fields burned, mouths measured like numbers in a ledger. The empire feeds itself by starving you, feeds its cities by hollowing out your villages, feeds its illusion of order by turning your people into skeletons. This is not only punishment, it is economy, a system where hunger becomes currency, and your suffering a resource. Yet in the pit of your stomach, where pain howls loudest, something refuses to vanish. Hunger sharpens memory. Every pang recalls the feasts once shared in freedom, the laughter around fires, the taste of fruit plucked without permission. The body withers, but the memory of fullness becomes rebellion. For the starving man who remembers abundance is more dangerous than the one who forgets. Still, hunger is cunning. It whispers bargains in the night: surrender for a morsel, kneel for a crust. It tempts you to believe that dignity can be traded for bread. But you know the truth carved in your body, that a lion does not eat scraps from another's hand. And so the hunger devours, but it cannot consume the one thing it desires most, your refusal. He lingers in the silence, a figure half remembered, half immortal, Menelik, the shadow that stalks every empire's dream. His name is a wound to Europe, a memory of the day when rifles cracked and steel met soil, and the invincible army of the West tasted defeat beneath an African sky. They called it Adwa. You call it survival carved into history. Menelik's shadow is not merely a ghost of victory, it is a mirror held against your chains. For while you suffer in darkness, the world still trembles at the thought of an emperor who refused to kneel. They tried to erase him, to reduce Adwa to accident, to strip his crown of meaning. But shadows grow when light tries to bury them, and Menelik's grows over you now, whispering a cruel reminder, your blood carries the same defiance, so why do you sit in silence? The empire fears shadows like his. Not because they are intangible, but because they are contagious. A single act of refusal becomes a story becomes a legend, and legends spread faster than armies. Menelik's victory was not only Ethiopia's, it was proof that Europe bleeds, that its illusions of destiny are fragile, that the colonizer can be unmasked as mortal. And yet, the shadow does not embrace you with comfort. It accuses. It demands. To live beneath his memory is to be measured against it. You feel the weight of that question pressing into your chains, will you be the echo of submission, or the roar that reignites the terror of Adwa? The dungeon grows darker as the shadow thickens. Menelik waits, not as savior, but as judge. For history does not spare those who forget its roar, and the empire knows this truth as well. That is why their cruelty sharpens, why the chains tighten. Because in every shackle they fasten, they fear they are only forging another Adwa. The empire builds not only with stone and steel, but with shadows. Railways slice through the earth like open wounds, carrying soldiers, weapons, and hunger deeper into your land. Iron bridges rise where rivers once sang freely, their black frames casting long silhouettes that look less like progress and more like cages stretched across the horizon. This is their kingdom of iron, cold, heavy, relentless. But iron alone cannot rule. Shadows must follow, seeping into the mind, teaching obedience where the sword cannot reach. Schools that erase your tongue. Churches that sanctify submission. Courts that disguise chains as law. The empire understands that true conquest is not only of land, but of memory, of belief, of the invisible spirit. You walk through this kingdom and see faces hollowed by silence, eyes that no longer dare to look upward. The shadow teaches them to bow without command, to forget without force. This is the architecture of domination, iron for the body, shadow for the soul. Yet shadows always betray themselves. For where there is shadow, there must also be light. And in the heart of the iron, the lion still stirs. Its outline flickers against the walls, refusing to fade. The empire may carve its railways, raise its towers, and weave laws of obedience, but every chain it forges trembles with the same fear, that one day the shadows will collapse, and the roar of the lion will echo louder than iron. They say chains are forged of iron, but the empire knows a subtler cruelty, chains of paper. Treaties, decrees, contracts, ink drawn across parchment that strangles more tightly than shackles ever could. A single signature can steal a kingdom, a single seal can erase generations, and the noose tightens not around the neck, but around the future. This is the paper noose, law as theater, diplomacy as weapon. They arrive with smiles and pens, offering promises gilded with civility, but hidden beneath every word is hunger. Promises of protection become annexation. Promises of friendship become subjugation. And the paper, once signed, is waved as proof that you chose your chains. That you surrendered not under the sword, but under your own trembling hand. Yet you know the truth, there is no ink without blood. Every line on their parchment is written with fields burned, with mouths starved, with bodies buried. The paper noose is soaked in the cries of those who never agreed, who never signed, but whose lives are still bound by its deceit. The empire believes paper to be eternal, that once written it cannot be undone. But paper burns. Paper rots. And memory cuts deeper than ink. The lion's story is not a treaty but a roar carved into the marrow of a people. So when they raise their documents as weapons, you feel not defeat but defiance. For though the noose tightens, though the words declare you conquered, the body remembers freedom that no parchment can erase. And one day, when fire touches the paper, the noose will crumble into ash. Silence spreads across the land like a shroud. Villages whisper instead of sing, fields stand untouched, and even the drums, those ancient heartbeats of the earth, fall still. It is the silence of breath held, of a continent watching the horizon. The empire believes this quiet means submission. But you know better. Silence is not surrender. Silence is waiting. Beneath it, the storm gathers. In the barracks, soldiers polish their rifles with trembling hands. In the palaces of Europe, maps are drawn with arrogance, red lines cutting through lives they will never see. And in the mountains, the lion sharpens its claws against stone, unseen, unheard. The silence presses against your chest, heavy as chains, yet alive with possibility. It is the pause before the scream, the stillness before thunder cracks the sky. Empires are arrogant, forgetting that storms are born in quiet air. They mistake calm for victory, forgetting that the deepest silence belongs to the moment just before the roar. And you feel it now, that breathless tension, that gathering weight. The storm is not far, it lives already inside your body, inside the bodies of those who refuse chains. When it breaks, it will not ask permission. It will not whisper. It will arrive with teeth, with fire, with a roar that scatters shadows. The dawn at Adwa did not rise gently, it tore open the sky like a wound. The mountains, sharp and jagged, loomed as witnesses, their stones slick with the dew of 1,000 restless breaths. The empire marched in with its banners and rifles, certain of an easy feast. They expected a body, weak and waiting, to be carved apart. But what they found was not a corpse, it was a lion, starved but unbroken, crouching in the dust, ready to strike. Adwa was no mere battle. It was a reckoning. The earth shook beneath the roar of tens of thousands who refused to vanish. Spears against rifles, flesh against steel, yet the empire's guns stuttered when faced with a will sharper than their bullets. Menelik's shadow stretched across the field, guiding hands that drew blood from those who believed themselves immortal. And the first drops of European blood spilled onto African soil tasted like prophecy. They called it war. But for the lion, it was a feast. Each fallen invader was not only a body but a symbol devoured, a myth dismantled, a mask ripped away. The empire had promised its people destiny, superiority, inevitability. Yet here, in the highlands of Adwa, destiny bled out in silence, superiority screamed in retreat, inevitability lay face down in the dust. The roar of victory carried far beyond Ethiopia. Across oceans and deserts, the sound traveled, a defiance that fed the starving, that gave voice to the silent. Colonized peoples heard it and remembered their own strength. The empire tried to hide the wound, to cloak its shame in silence, but history would not allow it. And in the aftermath, among the corpses and shattered rifles, the lion stood tall. Not as conqueror, not as tyrant, but as proof that the body which refuses chains can also refuse fate. Adwa was not the end. It was the warning. A reminder carved into the flesh of empire, the feast had only just begun. Victory is never clean. Even in Adwa's roar, the ground was soaked with the blood of sons and fathers who will never return. Triumph carries a scent, the iron tang of rifles, the smoke of burned grass, the sweet rot of bodies left for vultures. The lion fed, yes, but the feast left ashes in the mouth. For what is victory when the dead cannot rise to see it? The songs of triumph are sung through throats still raw from screaming. Mothers hold shields instead of sons. Children learn the cost of survival before they learn the taste of bread. Adwa proved that empire can bleed, but proof alone does not heal the wounds it carved. The ashes linger long after the banners are raised. The empire retreats, humiliated, but not gone. It waits in the shadows, sharper, hungrier, cloaking its shame with new deceit. Treaties sharpen like knives, famine spreads like fire, and the noose of paper and iron is redrawn. Victory buys only time, never peace. Yet even in the ashes, the lion does not fall silent. The memory of Adwa becomes a weapon stronger than steel. It whispers to the oppressed, it stalks the conquerors in their sleep, it festers in every ledger and every map. The triumph may taste of ashes, but even ashes can choke an empire. The empire never forgets its wounds. Adwa is a scar carved into its pride, and scars demand revenge. So it waits. Patient as a vulture, circling above, watching the lion's every step. It sharpens its teeth not only in barracks but in boardrooms, not only in arsenals but in classrooms where it teaches its children to believe Africa must one day be broken. Waiting is its craft. Empires do not always strike in fury, they strike in silence, in time, in hunger. They redraw maps in ink, they whisper alliances in smoke-filled rooms, they plant seeds of betrayal inside the very soil of the kingdom. Years pass, decades even, and still the empire waits, feeding its armies, feeding its hatred, feeding the myth that no lion can defy it forever. And you feel that waiting, even in victory. It lingers in the markets, where foreign coins rattle louder than native tongues. It stalks the fields, where strange laws govern ancient soil. It haunts the night, where spies and traitors mingle, gathering whispers to deliver back to Europe. The empire does not vanish, it crouches. This is the truth carved into every silence. The lion's roar may scatter armies, but empires measure time differently. They wait for the moment when hunger weakens the body, when division splits the pride, when memory begins to fade. And then they return, not as strangers, but as shadows you thought were gone. Time is the empire's sharpest weapon. It does not march with armies or thunder with cannons, it ticks. Quiet, patient, merciless. Every second wears at the lion's body, every year gnaws at his people's strength. The clock does not need to kill, it only waits for kings to grow weary, for thrones to rust, for memory to fade into dust. You feel it in your bones, the weight of years heavier than chains. Victories turn brittle, alliances decay, and even the strongest roar begins to crack beneath the silence of time. The empire counts on this. It knows flesh withers, blood dries, courage falters. And so it waits, polishing its rifles, rewriting its treaties, sharpening its lies, while the clock devours what swords could not. For what is a lion to eternity? What is a crown to centuries of hunger and betrayal? Time asks these questions with every strike of its hand, demanding an answer that no king can silence. And in that ticking, you realize the cruelest truth: the empire does not need to win today. It only needs to outlast you. They will try to bury it. They will call it myth, exaggeration, accident, anything but truth. For Adwa is a wound they cannot allow to heal, and so they cloak it in silence, erase it from their books, whisper it away in classrooms where children are taught that Europe alone shaped history. This is the forbidden memory, a day when the empire bled, and the lion proved it could never be tamed. The forbidden memory does not live in ink. It lives in the marrow of those who carried spears, in the lullabies of mothers who hummed of freedom, in the whispers of elders who passed down the tale like contraband fire. It hides in the rhythm of drums, in the names carved on graves, in the silence between breaths when a people remember what was taken, and what was reclaimed. Empires fear memory more than armies. Armies can be defeated, but memory cannot be disarmed. Memory survives famine, chains, treaties, the slow violence of time. Memory travels where soldiers cannot march, through blood, through story, through the secret inheritance of the oppressed. And when memory awakens, it becomes prophecy. That is why they forbid it. They know that to speak Adwa aloud is to admit that the empire can fracture, that destiny can collapse, that the lion is not myth but flesh. So they ban the roar, they outlaw remembrance, they replace history with shadows. But you know the truth, memory cannot be buried, only planted. And like a seed left in darkness, it waits, swelling, cracking stone, hungering for light. The forbidden memory will not vanish. It will bloom, and when it does, its roots will strangle every lie the empire ever wrote.